Could the Texas A&M Aggies pass for 4,000 yards this season?
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today, I want to have a discussion. Pulled some numbers from these last handful of Texas A&M football seasons, including last season, some seasons previous, and I want to figure out what the numbers are going to look like in the passing game this season. We're going to run through quarterback passing yards now. Here in segment 2, we're going to run through receivers numbers from last year, Kansas State numbers from last year, and then project what the receiver numbers are going to look like this season for the Aggies. But right now, so last season, Texas A&M threw for 3,520 yards, which is the most since 2014, in which the Aggies threw for 3,971 yards. So, 10 years. Last year was the most in 10 years, or 10 seasons. And interestingly enough, what stands out to me about this is you get, 950 yards from Weigman. You get 1,000 whatever from Max Johnson. I was blanking on his name for a second. Then you get a few hundred from Jalen Henderson. You get a few hundred from Marcel Reed. And what I want to know is this. If we can get – now, of course, you're going to have – if your quarterback stays healthy the whole season, you're still going to have a quarterback come in garbage time and have like 300 passing yards between some non-conference games, stuff like that. But I want to be able – and this comes back to our can Conner Weigman stay healthy discussion we've had here before on Locked On Aggies. But if Conner Weigman can stay healthy, I think – Texas A&M can have a 4,000-yard passing season. And, you do the math on it. Conner Weigman played he played 3 games and a quarter in a half of football and had about 1,000 yards. So, he would have given it a run for its money. He wouldn't have quite gotten to 4,000. I've just got this feeling. I'll tell you this. I will guarantee that Texas A&M has at least 3,500 yards next season to pretty much match what we had a season ago. But I wouldn't be surprised to see this team get close to 4,000. And, look at Kansas State's numbers from a year ago. Walker Howard had – is that his name, Walker Howard? Will Howard? Whatever the quarterback is, Howard. I think he transferred to Ohio State. Kansas State's quarterback last year. He had – I'm thinking it's Walker now. But he had – 2,600 yards himself, 2,643. Then you get the backup Avery Johnson at 479 passing yards. You have 3,135 on the year, so 3,135 passing yards on the season for Kansas State. And, Kansas State's the reason that I'm not buying too much into what the numbers looked like last year at Kansas State is simple. And it's a quote from Coach Elko. He said that from season to season, Coach Colin Klein is going to develop and change his offense based on the personnel he has on his roster that season. And, you look at Texas A&M's roster, you have really talented receivers. You have really talented tight ends to where I think you're going to be able to throw the football. Now, of course, I feel good about the running game. We're going to talk about Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens here a little bit later, but you feel good about this running game. And I look at this and I say to myself, I'm not saying – I think that people look at this and go, well, you have to have 3,500 yards. You can have a good season. You know what I mean? Maybe you have 7,000 yards offense, whatever it is. You can have 4,000 passing yards and 2,000 rushing. You know what I mean? You can have 6,000 whatever yards total offense. You can have a good season. It's not just like, well, if we get 4,000 passing yards, we're not going to have a whole bunch of rushing yards. That's not true. You can just have a good offense. You know what I mean? You can have a good offense with some balance. And if I had to guess, I just think that this team is going to have a really good year. So let's do the math on that. Now, of course, you have to remember, we're talking about, you have to assume a bowl game. You got a chance that, you make a playoff, you have a chance at a few games here. But so 4,000 yards, you divide that by 12 games, that would take 333. That's, a bit of a stretch. But I think if you take that by 13 games, because, the Aggies are going to play in a bowl game. So you take 4,000 by 13 games, that gets down to 307 yards. Still a tall ask. I think 3,500 yards, you do that divided by 13 games, we're talking 269 yards, which is not, that's much more doable. I just think you're going to see Conner Weigman be a quarterback who sits in that 300 yards per game average, to where he's going to have games where he has 415 yards. He's going to have games where he has 220. It's going to happen. He's going to have it, but it's going to balance itself out. So, and I kind of wanted to have this conversation. I went into it saying, is it possible Texas A&M has 4,000 passing yards? Yes, it is possible. It is most definitely possible. Am I betting on it? I don't think I'm going to say that. I think 3,500 to 3,700 is a very safe range for this offense, because I think you're going to run the football well too. I mean, let's pull up, last season, Texas A&M ran for, let me pull this. Oh man, now ESPN's closed on me. But Texas A&M ran for, I believe, just tell you right now, Texas A&M ran for 1,770 yards. I think you're going to see that number go up a little bit too, to around maybe the 2,000 yard mark. I think you're going to see, Le'Veon Moss take over. I think Le'Veon Moss has a shot at a 1,000-yard year, and then I think you could get 500 yards from Mar Daniels, 500 from or 250 from 500 from Ruben Owens, 250 from Mar Daniels, 250 from EJ Smith. I think that's possible to have a 2,000-yard season. So I think this team could have around 6,000 yards of total offense, 57, whatever. This offense is going to be better in 2024. I feel very confident about that. So 4,000 passing yards is a stretch, but I think that 3,500 to 3,700 is very doable. I think Conner Weigman's going to have his games, and then I think his bad games, he's still going to throw for 225. I don't think you're going to see Conner Weigman have many games where he has 174 passing yards. I don't think you're going to see that happen. I think you're going to see him have a lot of games in that 320, 330 range. Some games where he goes off for 400, some games where he's got 220, 250 in that range. And then it'll even itself out to a 270, 290 range, to where you're getting about 3,700 passing yards. I think you're going to see that. And keeping a quarterback healthy is going to play a role in this too. I mean, once again, if Conner Weigman plays last year, I think you could have gotten close to that 3,800 range, that 3,700. You get 3,520. Launching different quarterbacks in there every single week makes it tough for this to become a reality. And I guess summing all this up, the point I want to get across here is I think Texas A&M is going to be a great passing offense. I really do. I think they're going to move the football really well through the air. And I don't think they're going to struggle to run the football either. I think you're going to see this team be able to do it all on offense. And a lot of my confidence comes from how good of an offensive coordinator I think Colin Klein's going to be. All y'all everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know that I'm a huge Colin Klein guy. I think he's going to be an incredible OC, and I think he's going to take this offense to the next level. So that's going to be my guess. I'm going to say 3,700 yards. That's my guess. I think Texas A&M has 3,700 yards through the air this year. Let me know y'all's thoughts. Y'all's thoughts in the comments, higher or lower on that number. Let's set that. We're going to set that as the line, okay? The line is 3,700 yards passing. Y'all give me higher or lower in the YouTube comments. I really want to hear everybody's thoughts on that. So I think this passing offense is going to be dominant, and it wouldn't surprise me to see it go for 4,000, but I think that 3,500 to 3,700 range is more safe to project for 2024. We're going to talk a little bit about these wide receivers and look at last year's numbers and look at what we think this year might look like. what yards each receiver is going to have and who's going to really break away from the pack. We'll have that conversation. I do want to ask, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It really does help the show. I'd appreciate it a ton. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast platform, leave a 5-star review. All of that really helps the show. I appreciate it a ton. So we'll talk about all those wide receiver numbers coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So this wide receiver room is going to be an interesting one. I think you're going to see this Texas A&M wide receiver room really step up. So last season, let's run through the numbers. Nia Smith has 53 catches, 795 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Jahdae Walker, 35 receptions, 590 yards, 2 touchdowns. Evan Stewart, 38 receptions, 514 yards, 4 touchdowns. Noah Thomas, 29 receptions, 359 yards, 5 touchdowns. Moose, 27 receptions, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns, which I'll tell you this, that number surprised me. It really didn't feel like he had that many yards and receptions. Micah Tease, 2 receptions for 19 yards. Cottrell, who transferred to Kentucky, 1 reception for 13 yards and a touchdown. And then Malski, 1 reception, 5 yards, no touchdown. So you total 186 receptions, 2,644 yards, 16 total touchdowns from the receivers. I think you're going to see, I have my projections here. I think you're going to see a few more yards, a few more touchdowns from the Texas A&M receiver room. So I'm going to run through the numbers I have here. So I have Texas A&M's leading receiver being Jahdae Walker. I have him down for 57 receptions, 810 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think you're going to see him be close to 1,000. And listen, whether it's Noah Thomas or Moose or Micah Tease, Jabari Barber, Allen, whoever it is, whichever one of these receivers it is, or Walker, I think the number one guy is going to have close to 800, 900 yards, in that range, 750 to 900 range. I think 1,000 is going to be interesting. I think Coach Klein, while he does like to adapt his offense to the players he has on his team, I do believe that he wants to spread the ball around a little bit. He wants to get the ball in different people's hands. So I do think that's going to be the reality here. But yeah, I think you're going to see Walker, 57 receptions, 810 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's the guy I think takes over as wide receiver 1. That's my take right now. So I think he's in for a great year, ladies and gentlemen. I do think he takes over as wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 2, I have as Moose with 44 receptions, 592 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I think that he's going to have a huge season compared to last year. Last year, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he doubles his touchdowns this year. I think he just about doubles his yards. They're going to get Moose involved. Then I have Noah Thomas. I have him at 32 receptions, 517 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think he's going to be a big play guy. I think he's going to be a red zone target. I think he's going to have a handful of touchdowns this season. So I have Noah Thomas tied with Jahdae Walker as the number 1 guy when it comes to touchdowns. I've then got the transfer Drew Barber at 29 catches, 317 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think he's going to be a guy that's in and out of there. Once again, that sounds like a lot. We're 317 yards, right? You go, well, that's a lot of yards. That's that for a not starter, right? Okay, let's say 13 games, and you divide that by 317 yards. That's 317 yards. Oh, I can't press buttons. 317 yards divided by 13 games is 24 yards a game. If you want to do 12 instead of 13, that is 26 yards a game. So, that's what I'm saying. It's like, is he a 3 catch for 26 yards a game type of guy? Like, you hear 315, you go, I don't know if he's going to play that many snaps. We're talking 25 yards a game, ladies and gentlemen. Like, it's not a huge number he's going to have to hit. I've got Cyrus Allen at somewhere in that, 17 receptions, 150-yard mark. I don't know if he'll score. I put 0 touchdowns. So you do the math on that. That's 150 yards divided by 12 games. We're talking 12 yards a game. Like, I think he'll be out there some, not a ton. And then Micah Tees, I have at 30 receptions, 340 yards, and 1 touchdown. I think he's going to be out there. And as I said on yesterday's show, where we really talked a lot of positives about Micah Tees, I think that you're going to see him take that step in the right direction. I think you're going to see him have a good season. And then next year, maybe after a few folks move on, maybe to the NFL, you're going to see Tees take over as a potential wide receiver 1. I do think he's got an NFL future. I think he's a talented player. So I'm excited to see how that works. So I have the receivers down for 2,726 yards and 19 touchdowns. So 3 more touchdowns than last season and about, 80 more yards than last season, which is very possible. And then, you pull up the numbers on the Kansas State receivers. Their leading receiver, because their leading receiver yards was a tight end, Sanat, who I think would be a good NFL player. 6 touchdowns, about 700 yards, 676. Their leading receiver, Brooks, had 589 yards on 53 receptions, 5 touchdowns, 437 yards, 252, 227, 184, 38, 24. So, yeah, you got a lot of receivers getting a few yards. And so I think that leaves, if maybe the receiver receptions are I could have these numbers a little inflated. If the receiving yards are closer to 2,500 for the receivers, 2,600, whatever, that leaves room for your tight ends to have 800 yards, your running backs to have a couple hundred yards, and be close to that 3,700 mark I said is the higher or lower for the overall passing yards for the team. So, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. And, like I said, I think that you're going to see those are going to be the receivers getting involved. Could some of the freshmen get involved? Perhaps. But I think, if they are, it's going to be 4 catches for 37 yards. Like, it's not going to be any numbers super significant to these numbers. So let me know y'all's thoughts on these numbers. Are they a little high? Or anybody that I should have more yards for? Anybody I should have less yards for? I feel pretty good about these numbers. I think that they're pretty fair for each player. Some maybe a little high, some maybe a little low, whatever it is. But for the most part, I feel good about these numbers. So let me know in the YouTube comments, is there a receiver that you think I should have had down for more yards, or receiver I should have had down for less, more touchdowns, less touchdowns? Let me know those things in the YouTube comments. The spring game is coming up here soon, ladies and gentlemen, and I've got a handful of players that we need to see play well in this spring game to keep this level of confidence that I have heading into the 2024 season. We'll talk about who those players are and my reasoning behind it coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So, ladies and gentlemen, the spring football game is coming up, and I can tell you something confidently. I could not be more excited. This is going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait to, project it. It's coming up here. It's the 20th, I believe. Get double check. But yeah, so it's coming up here in a few weeks. I seriously could not be more excited. Yeah, I believe it's 20th Saturday. Couldn't be more excited. I love the way Coach Elko is doing it. We talked about this on a few episodes ago. He's going to have it be, they're going to draft teams. So it's not going to be, the one offense going against the two defense and the one defense going against the two offense. It's going to be mix and match guys. I'm really excited about that. So I've got a handful of names that we need to see play well in this spring game. And the first guy I got here, it's a tandem, and it's Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens. I said earlier we were going to talk about him. I think these two running backs are going to be the guys. And what's so frustrating about that, if you're Amari Daniels or E.J. Smith, is those are good running backs. Those guys could play. Those guys could start at a lot of schools. And, you're in a room where I just think Ruben Owens, he did not have the season I expected last year. Just to be honest with you, he didn't have the year I expected. I expected him to be a little bit better than he was. True freshman. Once again, I am not knocking him one bit. He was a true freshman. He did a lot well, and he did a lot where you left your head scratching a little bit. But I'm telling you, the kid has a bright future, and I'm really excited to see what he does this year. I would love to see both of these guys play well in the spring game. And then, of course, as everything, I double-checked every name that we're going to discuss should be out there. If anyone's heard anything otherwise, let me know. But both of those guys, I think you're going to see play well. I'm excited to see how they develop as runners. I'm excited to see how this offensive line blocks for them. You're going to have a mix and match offensive line. It's not going to be your starting five we're going to be used to, which that's the only downside. I'll say this. That is the only downside to the way Texas A&M is doing this, is it makes it hard on media members or folks, doing a podcast, because you're not going to see, it's not, the offensive line that goes out there first isn't your starting offensive line, because it's mix and match pieces that were pulled apart in a draft. So that's the only downside to this, but I'd love to see the running backs move the ball well. I'd love to see them break away. I'd love to see a lot of great running back play from these two guys. And then the next guy I have is Trey Zune. I think that what he does is going to be huge to make or break this year. I think Trey Zune had a better season last year than folks have given him credit for. The PFF grades, was he perfect? No, but the PFF grades tell you the story. He wasn't that bad. He was fine. So I think that Trey Zune, I want to see him play well. I'd love to see the offensive line as a whole play well, but Trey Zune in particular, I'd like to see him have a good game. I'd like to see him play well, look good, blocking. The next name I have here, and I have a reason. I know y'all might shake your head and go, Andrew, you're going to take any excuse to talk about Nick Scorton that you can. Well, that is true. Well, that is a fact. The reason I'm talking about Nick Scorton right now is because I've sat here and talked about how good he's going to be for weeks and months now on this show, as you everydayers know. And I'm just telling you, I'd like to see it. You know what I mean? I can talk about it. I can sit here and talk about it all I want. Y'all can sit here and listen all you want to me talk about how great Nick Scorton's going to be. I'd love to see him go and show flashes and prove why in this game. Get a sack, get constant pressure, make whichever offensive lineman's lined up across from you, make their life heck all game long. That's what I want to see Nick Scorton do in this game. I want to see him prove, hey, I am the guy that you think I am, and a really big double-digit sack season is coming up for me. That's what I want to see from Scorton. And then the last names I got here, and it's two, it's the transfer tight ends. We don't know the status of Donovan Green when it comes to the start of the year. We don't know what he's going to look like. So Watson and Miller, the transfers, Miller from Purdue, these guys are going to be your guys in this game, along with Platt and then Theo. So I'd like to see these guys. Hey, we can play ball a little bit. As I've talked about, y'all everydayers know that I am a huge Donovan Green truther, but he's coming back off an ACL tear that happened right before the start of the season. He's not 100% yet. He's still got some ways to go. So I'd love to see these tight ends be good, to know, hey, whatever happens, Texas A&M has a handful of really good tight ends, whether Green's still banged up and can't be ready to rock and roll for the year, whatever it is. I want to see these two transfer tight ends have a good spring game, so we know that we can be confident in that position heading into the season, regardless of the status of Donovan Green. Let me know in the comments a few players that y'all want to see play well in the spring game. I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on that. But that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank y'all so much for being here every single day. As always, I really do appreciate it. Hope everybody has an outstanding rest of their Tuesday, and we will see you tomorrow.